Hi everyone, it's Annie, and I'm so excited about today's video. This is going to be my IndigAthon 2020 tag and wrap-up video. So, I have my tea, grab your drink, and let's get started. So, some background on IndigAthon if you didn't know. It was a readathon created by two other booktubers, Etu Brody and Thor Wants Another Letter, and I will link their channels down below. And it's basically a month-long readathon in November celebrating Native American Heritage Month, and just you're inspired and encouraged to read by Indigenous authors all month of November. So that's what I did. And I read 7 books for this readathon. I was excited. The 7 books were Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones, Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, Elatsoe by Darcy Littlebadger, This Accident of Being Lost by Leanne Simpson, Split Tooth by Tanya Tagak, The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Dimaline, and Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabgashig Rice. So first I'm going to get into the tag questions, and then at the end I'll review any remaining books that didn't apply to any of the tag questions. So to start off, I want to say that in terms of the bingo board, all of these books can apply to the new to you square because I'd never read from any of these authors before. And most of the books I read, with the exception of Elatsue and I believe Mapping the Interior, were Canadian, not from the United States. So that fills that square. Also, I did not read the group book, Heartbeat Braves, because I am really not a big romance fan, and honestly the synopsis did not sound interesting to me personally, but I recommend you check it out if it does sound good to you. Question number 1. What's your favorite book by an Indigenous author? Now, disclaimer before I answer this, I have not read many books by Indigenous authors, which I will definitely change in the near upcoming future because through IndigAthon and everyone's videos about it, I've gotten some really great book recommendations by Indigenous authors that I have on my TBR now. But out of the books I have read, I think it would be Moon of the Crusted Snow. It just really stuck with me, and it's a sci-fi story, so since that's my thing, maybe that's part of why I love it so much. But I gave this book 5 stars immediately after finishing it, and I finished it super quickly because I just did not want to put it down. I wanted to read about how the characters got out of the situation they were in. So let me give you a small, spoiler-free synopsis of the novel. This Anishinaabe community in northern Canada are living on a reservation, and suddenly, one day, after the main character goes hunting for a moose for the winter, their power goes out, and then their cell phones go out, everything goes out, and since they're kind of disconnected from the outside world because they're in such a rural place and it's now winter, it's hard for them to know what's going on in society at large. So they eventually find out that the whole world is in a post-apocalyptic mess and no one knows what to do, and the people living on the reservation kind of have to band together and start to relearn some of the old ways that generations before them had used to survive in the harsh winter of what's now Canada. And it was just such an amazing, beautiful book. And I'm pretty sure the author is working on a sequel right now, which I am so excited for. Yes, I really want another book of this. And personally, I am more of a character-driven reader than a plot-driven reader. And I fell in love with all the characters in this book. I really felt like I could connect with them. They were all well fleshed out, even the minor characters, And I especially loved the main character, Evan, and his family. I felt like you really got to know them and sympathize with them. So I really, really recommend this book. Question number 2. What book do I recommend the most? This is kind of hard, but I picked 2 for this question. One is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is about this man named Serapio who is on this journey to his homeland, his ancestral homeland. He is the human embodiment of an ancient crow god. So he's returning to his homeland, which he's never been to before, for the occasion of awakening this crow god on the solstice and the solar eclipse. Yes, that's what it's called, the solar eclipse. And it's just such a creative book, and I recommend it to a lot of people because it's fantasy, and I know a lot of people enjoy that. Obviously, I do too. It's just such a great book. It also has a lot of great LGBT representation because the woman he ends up traveling with, who takes him on this journey, is a captain of a ship, which is awesome. And she's a magical woman. She can control the sea through singing. And she is also bi or pan, which is just great. And so I really recommend this book. It's super interesting, and I believe it's going to be a series as well. The next book, Elatsue by Darcy Little Badger, is a middle grade / YA book that I think most people would really enjoy. I say most people because I wish I had enjoyed it more than I did. Don't get me wrong, I did like it, otherwise I wouldn't be recommending it. But there were just parts of it that didn't work for me personally. I wasn't really expecting vampires. I don't know, it just wasn't what I expected. There were a couple of vampire characters in the book, which I personally just don't like. I don't like vampires unless they're done in a very, very specific way. I really don't like vampires. So that's just a personal bias of mine, which doesn't really say anything about the actual quality of the book. So please just keep that in mind. But I love the title character, Elatsue. She is the cutest thing. I absolutely love her magic. She has the ability to call the ghosts of dead animals. It's just beautiful, and she has this little dog companion, this ghost dog companion that is so cute. I really, really like her, and I really connected to her a lot. And she's also asexual, which is just so amazing. We need more asexual representation, and it's especially great that she's the main character of this novel. If I had read this when I was younger, I think I would have loved it. Absolutely loved it. So I think this is a great, great book, great representation, great story. Elatsue uses her power to try and figure out why her cousin died. He died under mysterious circumstances, and she tries to figure it out with her family and friends' help. It's a really, really good book. Just some parts of it didn't work for me on a personal level, but it's a really quality book that I do really recommend. Question number 3. What's a book that I read because of someone else's recommendation? Now, I wasn't recommended this personally, but I saw it in one of Lena Norm's videos, and I immediately wanted to check it out. And that is Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq. And this book is honestly a really, really, really strange book. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. It's a magical realism book told in a kind of lyrical poetry style, and it's about this girl, this Inuit girl growing up in Nunavut, Canada during the 1970s and 80s. And I didn't give this book any rating on Goodreads because I was honestly really conflicted. I think in general the book was good. but there were some parts of it that I absolutely loved, while there were also parts of it that I hated. Like, I just couldn't handle. It was just too much for me, and it really kind of made the rest of the book not as enjoyable. So because of that, I didn't really feel comfortable giving the book a rating, and I will warn you, if you're interested in this book, there are a lot of content warnings like child abuse, sexual abuse, and things like that, so please be mindful of that if you're going to check out this book. And if you are going to check out this book, I really, really highly recommend reading the audiobook because Tanya Tagaq narrates it. First of all, her voice is beautiful, and also in between each chapter you get a little snippet of her Inuit throat singing, which is just so cool and special. So let me know if you're going to check it out. Question number 4. What's the most recent book by an Indigenous author that you've read? For me, it is the latest book that I read for IndigAthon, Moon of the Crusted Snow. Question number 5. What's the next book by an Indigenous author that you plan to read? Now, this is Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I've been wanting to read this. It's been really hyped up on Booktube. It sounds like an amazing horror novel, and I wanted to read it for this IndigAthon, but unfortunately, the hold list at my library for it was so long that I won't get it by the end of this month, but I'm still on the hold list for it, and I'm planning to read it whenever it comes to me. So instead of this one, I read the other book that I've been wanting to read by Stephen Graham Jones, which was Mapping the Interior. And the last question, question number 6. Is there any 2020 release by an Indigenous author that I still need to get to? Yes, there is. And I didn't know about this book before looking up IndigAthon, so I heard about it from Brody's channel, and it is Brave by James Bird. And the main character, Colin, this is a middle grade novel. He suffers from OCD, which immediately had me really interested because I've had some dealings with that in the past that have not been fun. And he is bullied in school, he's having a really rough time in school with his OCD, and he is sent to live with his birth mother in an Ojibwe reservation in Minnesota. And he has never met her before, and it seems like a really special, heartwarming coming-of-age story. Also, I wanted to mention the Nonbookish media square on the bingo board. Now, I am counting Tanya Tagaq's Inuit throat singing, and I've also listened to some other throat singers on YouTube because of this. I had never heard of it before I read Tanya Tagaq's book, and honestly, when I was listening to it, I was surprised at first because I didn't know that her throat singing was going to be on the audiobook. So I was a little surprised, but immediately I looked it up, and it's so interesting and beautiful to listen to. So I really recommend you check out some Inuit throat singing. And if anyone has any recommendations for some other non-bookish media, I'd really appreciate it. I especially love a good documentary, so please let me know in the comments down below. And now I want to talk about the 2 books that I haven't already mentioned. The first one is This Accident of Being Lost, which is a really powerful poetry collection by Leanne Simpson. And this book really, really stuck with me. I recommend listening to the audiobook because it's narrated by the author, and her voice really does her poems justice. It's just such a really powerful experience to hear her say her poetry out loud. And her poems are about the effects of colonization on Indigenous people, which is a pretty reoccurring theme here, and especially how it affects modern Indigenous people. So I really recommend you check out this book. It's a poetry collection, so it's really short, but it's definitely absolutely worth the read. And the next one is The Marrow Thieves by Sherry DeMaline. I loved this book so much. The synopsis is that all people except for Indigenous people in this society, in the world, in this book setting, have lost the ability to dream. And because of that, they all go mad. But the Indigenous people now have to be on the run constantly because they're hunted by the white people who are capturing them and forcibly taking their bone marrow, because supposedly the bone marrow help them in some way regain the ability to dream. And that is just so messed up. But also, that concept is so creative and I absolutely love it. My only complaint about the book, because it was so good, I just wish we got a little bit more of that concept fleshed out, because it's just kind of in the background, overarching the whole story, which I guess is what the author was going for. But again, I like sci-fi stuff, and I just think it was such an interesting concept that I wish I had more of in the book, but that's okay. Because, like I said, I am more of a character-driven reader, and the characters in this book were really well done. I loved them all. Like Moon of the Crusted Snow, I just felt like I really knew the characters, even the ones that weren't on the page for very long. I felt like they really had a personality and they really stood out and they were fleshed out really well. And you just follow this boy, this young man, who lost his family while he was on the run, and he joins this group of other natives who are just trying to survive out in the wilderness now because they have nowhere else to go on the run from the white people who are trying to kill them. It's just so powerful. The people that he meets are just amazing. And the ending to this, I don't want to give any spoilers, but the ending is so good. And just to say, it's not a spoiler, I guess it is, but there's no details. The ending is very hopeful, even though there's a lot of sadness and tragedy in this book and throughout the book. The ending itself is really hopeful and just left me feeling so good. So I really recommend this book. Please go read it. Alright guys, and that is it for my IndigAthon tag and wrap-up video. Please let me know down in the comments if you participated in this year's IndigAthon as well, or if you have any book recommendations for Indigenous authors. Please let me know. I'd love to read more. And just let me know what you thought of this video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!